welcome back. Everybody awake? Yes. All right. Otherwise, I'll have to shout out the window, right? Whoa! Okay. Yeah, there's no window. We have to imagine it. Yeah. What's that? Oh, there's a window. Whoa! The Avengers, right? Yes. Great movie. Okay, so news writing and editing. So you now have successfully taught your students, encouraged them, created an environment for them to be a journalism student, for them to take some risks, be willing to fail. They went to their interview prepared. They found an angle. They got some great quotes and all that. So now how do you put it together? You know, one thing I did 7 years ago when I started teaching, I am a journalist. I have a journalism degree. I worked as a journalist and a freelance writer, and then I wanted to teach. Well, journalism isn't a core subject, so I had to go back to school and get an English degree. So anyway, in my English class, I always tell them I was a journalist hired to teach a couple of English classes. And so my English kids get a lot of this journalistic writing as well. So if you're not teaching, where is she? Journalism. There you are. A lot of this, you know, go ahead and have your English students do as well. All right, so writing, telling the story. You have all the information, you have your interview notes. How do you tell the story? The story is actually told 3 times in every story. The headline is a summary of the lead. So when you have your kids writing headlines, ask them in present tense, active verbs, how can you tell the story of the lead? How can you summarize that lead in your headline? It needs to be something catchy that the reader's going to want to read on. Then the lead is a summary of the story. And the reason we do this is because people don't spend a lot of time reading. And if you can't capture their interest, they're not going to move on. And then the rest of the story. So every story is actually told 3 times. Okay, basic rules to guide the headline writer. And I tell my kids to write the story first and then get to the headline, but we'll talk a little bit about headlines. They should summarize the story. They should emphasize the heart of the story. There should be no opinion stated in the headline. Mentana's Rock. Our girl dance team is called the Centanas, so we have Mentanas that perform at homecoming. But you can't put Mentana's Rock. That's opinion, okay? So you got to keep that out of there. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, don't try and write all this. I would stop turning around, except I can't read what's on those back screens there. So. The headline should not give information that is not in the story. Don't do that to your reader. Don't give them something in the headline that they're reading and reading and reading and you never get to, okay? Although a great headline I read one time that said, the airbag is not a hanky. It was this short little news brief in our local paper. The airbag is not a hanky. And anyway, it was a short little brief about a lady who had a sneezing fit and ended up running into a telephone pole and the airbag deployed. And she was slightly injured, but it was kind of a funny story. But the headline, the airbag is not a hanky. I don't know. All right. The headline should inform the reader through a simple sentence. Subject, verb, and a direct object. Headlines are generally short. Okay? I have my kids write a headline and a deck, or a secondary headline. Headline should be short. It should be creative. It should grab their interest. The deck, or the secondary headline, should give a little more information to your headline. The headline and the deck should not share any of the same words. Also, headlines and decks, you capitalize the first word and proper nouns in a headline and a deck, and there's no punctuation. Okay? All right, down there, storms cause widespread flooding in low-lying areas. Duh. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute, too, about headlines. So the best headlines are in active voice, using active verbs instead of being verbs. It should be written in present tense. And that's hard for students to do. They want to write in the past tense because it happened. Okay, but present tense, avoid using a, an, and the. Shorten it down. Cliches are good. Play on words are good. Alliteration, that's good. We have a lot of fun at Layout. I don't know if you guys do this, but we'll help each other with headline writing. And boy, we come up with just some great ones that could never be published, but we have a lot of fun. And there you go, only capitalized first word, proper nouns, minimal publication. Okay, but before we go on to leads, I'm going to read you some of these, and maybe you've seen these, but students love them because you have to be careful in writing a headline. Because in your mind, it makes sense, but when someone else reads it, it doesn't make sense. For example, include your children when baking cookies. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that. And don't offend your readers. Their intelligence, such as something went wrong in jet crash. Right. Or police begin campaign to run down jaywalkers. Well, that would solve the problem. Drunk gets 9 months in violin case. Oh, 9 months inside a violin case. Survivor of Siamese twins joins parents. Poor choice of a verb. Iraqi head seeks arms. Here's a good one. Eye drops off shelf. So my guess is an eyeball didn't really drop off the shelf, but that they've pulled the eye drops from the shelf for some reason. Teacher strikes idle kids. Clinton wins on budget, but more lies ahead. Ha ha. Enraged cow injures farmer with axe. Must have happened in Missouri. Miners refuse to work after death. I tell you, the day I die, I'm not teaching another day. Guaranteed. They don't pay me enough to teach after death. Stolen painting found by tree. It's a pretty smart tree. Killer sentenced to die for second time in 10 years. Wow. Cold wave linked to temperatures. Again, don't offend your reader. Let's see. Here's one of my favorites. Hospitals are sued by 7-foot doctors. Those are some big doctors, yes.
One of the things I tell my students about headlines, be careful with abbreviations, because not everyone might know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So EPHS FFA travels to UT.
Oh my goodness. Sounds like the military or journalism, national journalism, but it's true. And actually a headline would not be a place to put any kind of acronym. Save that for your story, okay? Besides, they're not very catchy. They're not going to get someone to read your story. Okay, let's talk about 3 different ways. And headlines on your flash drive, online, there is a worksheet that's called Hot Headlines. And I have my students, after they've begun writing their story, to brainstorm 2 different ideas for a headline and a deck. And it also gives them space to sketch out a design. Because headlines very much can be part of your design. So when they're thinking the whole package, the whole maestro concept. Okay, leads. There's an inverted pyramid lead. And that is what generally you learn in journalism school. It's the first lead taught. That's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The most important information in the story is told first, and then the lesser details as you go along. And that comes from, historically in journalism, print costs money. And so way back when, the editor wouldn't even really read the story to cut it. They just start lopping off paragraphs from the bottom. And so you better have told your story right up front. When I worked for the paper in Wyoming, probably about, well, it's a long time now, about 15 years ago, I got paid $1 an inch. It's about, yeah, is that about what it is now, or is it a lot more? $1 an inch. Then if I took my own photos, I got paid $10 a photo. So of course you try and write a bit longer, but if they couldn't fit it in, boom, 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 it'd just come right off the bottom. A feature lead, and for my students, I call that a 3-paragraph lead. It's not just one sentence, it's actually 3 paragraphs. We'll go into that. And then there's a narrative lead. Eric Adler from the Kansas City Star is a phenomenal narrative writer. So it's nonfiction, it's journalism, but it reads very much like fiction. Okay, so here's the inverted pyramid. Like I said, it's the most important information first. These are often the news stories. An example would be a Murfreesboro man died Monday afternoon when his car spun out of control on the rain-slickened Broad Street, crashing into a utility pole and threw him through the windshield. The man, 20-year-old John Frazier of 212 Moore Court, lost control of his blue 1998 Ford Mustang around 5 p.m. while heading northwest on Broad Street at about 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. Boring, okay? I let my students know about the inverted pyramid. I do know some journalism programs at universities are requiring that that's all they write. And I think it's a shame, because I think, again, journalism is intimate. We're telling people stories, and this to me is just so cold. But your students do need to know about it, because even if you're writing a feature lead or a narrative lead, you still have to put the important information up front, okay? All right. So a feature lead, here's my flow chart, which will make more sense to you in just a minute. The 3-paragraph lead is basically the lead paragraph, and that's your anecdote. It's always an anecdote. It's the story within the story. So what did it feel like when your ACL snapped and you knew that the gymnastics scholarship you had just accepted was probably out of the picture? What did that moment feel like? Get the anecdote. Start with the anecdote. Tell it in present tense. I always say to my students that anecdote, when you write it, it's like those claw machines where you throw your money away, you put 50 cents in, my daughter likes it, and it grabs the animal, and then it drops it. Like you never get it. But I say, pretend you're taking that claw and you're grabbing me. I'm your audience, I'm gonna read your draft. You're gonna lift me up, drop me into the moment her ACL tore. So you're telling it present tense as if a curtain just opened and I'm there, okay? So they have to ask those questions to get the anecdote. Lead paragraph, separate paragraph, hit return is your news paragraph. This is your what they call nut graph. It's where there's some facts, okay? What do we wanna know when something's happening? What are the 2 things you want to know? Who and what. This is a good time to put the who and the what. Sophomore, so-and-so, blah, 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 tore her ACL during gym class, losing a full ride scholarship, blah, 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 okay? So that's the second one. And then the 3rd paragraph is a reaction quote. And it's important that reaction is there. I always tell my students, so you have an anecdote, you have some facts, but then the quote needs to be a reaction to the news paragraph above it. Not just a random quote, but if you just said that it snapped or whatever, and this is what happened on this day, the quote needs to be a reaction. It needs to be, I knew in that moment that I'd have to pay for college, right? I'm gonna become a music major. It's a reaction, okay? Not, you know, so many times my students want to put news in their quotes. I go to the gym 4 times a week, quote, so-and-so said. No, put that in the news paragraph. You know, so-and-so goes to the gym 4 times a week. Yeah, I want to be big and strong when I get bigger, okay? That's the reaction. So what you have here, I think we have, so you have anecdote, news, a reaction quote, which is in reaction to that news, then the next paragraph is another news paragraph. It's like Hansel and Gretel going through the woods, and they have to, I think I'm getting a phone call. They have to drop, didn't they drop like bread or something like that along the way? And so I tell my kids, like Hansel and Gretel, you have to string your reader along. You want them to pick up another fact and read a great reaction quote and then pick up another fact. And that's the way you get them to read your whole story. So it just keeps going. So news paragraph, reaction, news paragraph, reaction. Once my students can master this formula, I say mix it up a little. Sometimes you're telling a story, you go to the interview and they give you 5 anecdotes. I mean, this person's just telling stories. Well, then do LP, NP, RP, NP, RP, NP, RP, LP, NP, RP, NP, RP, LP, NP, RP. And so it's just continual. Most stories written, feature stories like this, end with a quote. They always go, I don't know how to finish. Well, whatever your last fact is, your last bit of information, boom, end it with a good reaction quote. Okay? Love this. This is what I spend most of my time teaching my kids. Like I said, I teach them about the inverted pyramid, but this is what we practice over and over and over again. Okay? If they don't give you an anecdote, I always say a second best option is to go to an event, if they're a cheerleader, and write an observation lead. So instead of the anecdote, it's more an observation written in present tense. Again, you're dropping the reader into the action, but they fall back on that. So be careful. Make sure they're getting some anecdotes, because I think we had one issue where every lead was an observation. You know, and it's just, yeah, too much. Okay, so for example, the plane that crashed in the Hudson River, found a great story. Many stories written about it, but this is written as a featured lead. Some passengers screamed, others tucked their heads between their knees, and several prayed over and over, Lord, forgive me for my sins. But a man named Josh, who was sitting in the exit row, did exactly what everyone is supposed to do, but few ever do. He pulled out the safety card and read the instructions on how to open the exit door. So there's your anecdote. News paragraph. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 smacked the Hudson River the way a speedboat lands after jumping over a wake, with a thud that rattled teeth and nerves and stunned the cabin silent. It was as if everyone was waiting for someone else to shout in pain, and no one did. Reaction quote. Then Josh stood up. Someone tried to pull the door in, another passenger recalled, and he said, no, you've got to throw it out. He twisted it and threw it out. And it goes on and on and on. A little bit of news. It goes into the people. This reporter talked to the different personalities and what happened and where they were. Great story. Feature lead. Very personal. Very emotional. You want to read more. Okay, and then there's the narrative lead or narrative story. Really, it's the whole thing. And in this, pieces are usually longer, much longer. I will not read you this whole story, but this is one story that was printed in the Kansas City Star. You know, you have to be a great writer to get people to read this long of a story, and Eric Adler is just amazing. But you employ those elements of prose writing. And that's why I say, have your English students do this. It's nonfiction. They're interviewing people, but they're writing narrative. It tells a story. It's creative nonfiction, and it emphasizes character development. This story, and I'll read just a little bit about it. The headline says, Miracle in 24 hours, a family must face the unimaginable. Sue and Dennis Mowry barely have enough energy to move as the weight of the doctor's words washes over them. Sue takes hold of her husband's hand. Tears roll down Dennis's cheeks. I'm sorry, the doctor says softly, but all the tests, all the blood work, all the brain scans only confirm the worst. The damage from the accident was too much. Ashley, their 8-year-old daughter, is brain dead. It is early Friday evening, April 6th, in the pediatric intensive care unit at Children's Mercy Hospital. One day after a teenager on his ATV accidentally slammed into Ashley on the gravel road in front of her rural home near St. Joseph. Sue and Dennis, exhausted with grief, sit in a cramped conference room with their family, the doctor and the hospital chaplain. 15 paces away behind the sliding glass doors of room 13, Ashley, an impish, sandy-haired tomboy, lies unconscious at the center of the room, eyes closed and still wearing the red t-shirt and jean shorts she put on yesterday to play. And it goes on talking about the ventilator tube, and so much character development. I mean, really, you can't read the story without crying by the end. They go into donor or donating organs, and the dad, the one thing about Ashley was her eyes. She had beautiful blue eyes, and the dad said at the very end, he finally relented, and they agreed that Ashley would want to donate her organs. He said, but not her eyes. Great story, great story. And this, I have yet, I do a little teaching on it. I encourage my kids. That's my goal. And maybe this year, I want to get my kids to tackle a narrative piece. He also wrote a series called Sarah's Hope. Any of you read that in your Journalism 1 class? Sarah's Hope was a 3-part story that came out in the Kansas City Star about a cheerleader who was overweight, and everyone yelled things at her, cow and pig and all that, but she kept cheering. By the time Eric found out about her, he had a coworker who liked to go to high school games, and he came one day and he said, Eric, there's this cheerleader. I mean, she just doesn't fit the norm. She's overweight, people are mean to her. There's a story there. So he started going to the games, and he approached her and talked to her. She had a terrible home life. She agreed to an interview with him. But because he was playing catch-up, because the 3-part story starts when she's an 8th grader, and she's trying out for high school to be a high school cheerleader. And it goes back and forth talking about her home life. But at this point, she was a junior. It was the end of her junior year. So he wrote this narrative, 3-part story, with extensive interviews. Okay, when you were an 8th grader and you came home and you were waiting for the phone call, what did you do? Describe to me, what did you do? Well, I walked in the house and I took off my shoes and ran into my mom's room and sat on the bed with the phone and waited for the phone to ring. And he goes, okay, wait, back up. Okay, when you walk in the door, do you untie your shoes and then take them off? And she laughed and said, no. I walk in and I kick them off, and wherever they land, and then whatever. And the way he writes that story, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's fiction. I mean, it's story. It's narrative. It's so beautiful. And so if you don't have it and you want it, get a hold of me. I have business cards, so email me and I'll send you Eric Adler stories because they're phenomenal. Yes.
Some of the kids that are in our journalism class, I mean, because it is considered an elective, some kids sign up for it, not really understanding what goes into
Oh, yeah. It's an easy A, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So for students that, I mean, because once they get in the class, of course, they get somewhat interested in it, but how do you get a child to start writing to where they are putting the emphasis in character, or they're able to start telling a story?
Yep.
Or,
You know, again, it goes back to reading, writing. And in order for me to get them to read, I need to read to them. And so my semester-long Journalism 1 curriculum goes, some days I read Sarah's Hope, I read parts of it, and then we do some style book, and then we do some writing or whatever, and work on our assignments. And I'll read Sarah's Hope, the 3 parts. It takes us a couple weeks to read through it. I read Radio. Great story that prompted the movie about radio. That's another great one. I read other Eric Adler stories, but I just read great writing. Radio is a fantastic story to read when you're teaching them about anecdotes. There's 1,000,001 anecdotes in that story. And so how do you get them to do it? You read to them. And then you have all those books and those Rick Bragg books and stuff out, and you loan them out, and you get them to read. Really, they have to want to write more creatively. And then when you get their information, or you get their drafts, then you make comments, you know, yes.
Ariane, I just wanted to tell you that that had happened to me the first year I taught journalism, that they decided kids who had failed the FCAT but did well on this first round of focus tests, they decided to stick them in my class in the semester, and they had been in intensive reading. And so I found, I had talked yesterday about Hot Topic Thursday, but if you can find what engages them, whether if it's sports writing or it's extreme sports or something there, and build a lesson on that, that's how I hooked a couple of guys who just really were
absolutely
throwing lines around their feet.
Yep.
They were really interested in either environmental issues, so we did things on,
Yep.
Greenpeace and show them exciting things, and
Yep.
or action verbs, and give them a sports writing assignment
Yep.
where they had to come up with 10 ways to write tackle in a different way and write headlines.
Or
There are ways.
yeah,
It's hard,
it is hard. Take them to Williston, take them to the penitentiary. Then they'll want to write about it. But when you just assign them the story, so you got to take them places. All right, so there's the 3 examples of writing. The first 5 words of a lead will usually tell you what kind it is. You'll be able to tell if it's that inverted pyramid or a feature. So give the students a formula, teach them, and then unleash them to do it and to find their voice. And again, they'll kind of start liking some of the stories that you're reading to them. They'll be drawn to a certain voice and a certain type of writing. So give them the formulas, make sure that they know the rules, but then allow them to break the rules. All right, editing. Use Google Docs. How many of you use Google Docs? Okay, how many of you do not? How many of you have your students turn in a hard copy to edit? How many of you have them email? Okay, if you're not on Google Docs, you've got to get on Google Docs. We're 100% paperless. When I first started as an advisor, they had to turn in 3 drafts. They had to make a copy for me, for the editor, for the section editor. We all made corrections. We gave it back to them. We didn't know. They would say, my printer's out of ink. Sorry, I have it done. I worked all last night, but I couldn't print it, blah, blah, blah. Email it to me. Oh, I did email it to you. Oh, I must not have spelled your last name correctly. Right? So we got on Google Docs. Google Docs, I'll tell you the best thing about it is accountability. There's a revision history on there that when they say I've been up all night, you just go to File, Revision History, and it tells when you were on it and when they were on it. You go, wow, that's funny. You weren't on it at all last night. Well, how'd you know that? Because there's a revision history. There's so much accountability. So now we actually have Google Apps, and so we have email addresses for all our staff. It's their first name _ last name at centurypulse.com. I don't know, something like that. But it's a Google Apps email, and so we just do a folder. We'll do like issue 3, and in issue 3 folder we have news, opinion, feature, entertainment, all that. And then if they're writing a feature story, they just take their Google document and they just drag it into that folder. The feature editor will read it, I'll read it, the editor will read it, the copy editors will read it. If you're not on Google Docs, that's one thing you've got to do. On your flash drive and online, there is a one-sided Word document, how to set up a Google Docs account. I just give it to them. If you don't have one, here you go. It tells you how to set it up. It's easy. If you have a Gmail account, you're already on there. Yes?
What do you do with a class where there's almost no one who's capable of editing a paper?
You teach them how to edit. And here, and we'll go on with that. Once you're on Google Docs, there's requirements. The section editor, the sports editor, has to edit all the sports stories in his section. And he or she has to make comments. And so I always say you read through it once for content. You read through it the second time if you see any errors. And they need to make comments, and they need to say at least one positive thing. You can't say, this sucks, why are you on staff, right? And so we do the high-low thing. We play high-low, and you know, this needs to be constructive. Teach the students to edit, there you go. The writer edits first, and that's one thing just to emphasize from day one. You, as the writer, need to edit first. You have those kids that don't capitalize words, they don't put in any punctuation. Well, I'll do that later. No, you're going to do it right now. Well, my phone automatically capitalizes. Does this look like your phone? It's not your phone. This is a computer. So you have to do it, okay? So they need to edit first. And I'll pull someone aside if it's chronic. You know, we're having to make all these comments simply about things that you should have already fixed. Yes?
What's the turnaround time for the students to write their stories, edit them?
We have a monthly news magazine. So we have story assignment day where they get their story, and usually the first draft is in about 4 to 5 days. Second draft is 3 or 4 days after that. Final draft with all their photos due, graphic information. All in all, it's about 3 weeks. With the way our schedule goes with holidays and such throughout the year, we have a couple of issues that are pretty tight, maybe 2.5 weeks. Closer to 2 weeks, but they get done. I'll tell you the thing with a deadline, when there's a deadline, the only reason we ever publish anything is because we have deadlines. Otherwise, nothing would ever be finished because we can always improve on it. Did you have a question? No?
Yeah,
Yes?
do you have maybe a template calendar that you could share?
Yeah, that is a good question. All my editors always, there's one in there that Aaron has. Oh, that's for your book. Yeah, email me and I'll send you what we have. My editors set the deadlines. And we have, since we're on Google Docs, the other good thing is that we have a Google Calendar. You just switch over to the tab. All our layout dates for the entire year are on there. They can get work off. You know, they can say no to their friends on that night because they have to be at layout. And so maybe what I should do, yeah, email me and I'll just make a PDF of that and give you a sample of what our year looks like. That would be easy, yes?
Might be a question for a later session, but just in terms of scheduling, if you always publish online, should you still have like a monthly cycle?
Yeah, when we were successfully online, we had a web schedule and it's just ongoing. Every day, X number of things need to be published, but it doesn't mean you're working on something every night for the next day, but everyone has so long. It's a more complicated schedule, but how do you do it? Do you have a?
We don't do it well.
Okay.
But we do it.
You do it. That's
yeah,
the important
I
thing.
make the whole, I put school events, I put everything, and then at the beginning of the month we sit down and talk about everything, and I
Right.
make a hard copy, and I tell them they can look at it online.
Okay. Once a week, we would, you know, for our monthly publication, we would have story idea day once a month. But for web, we'd do it once a week. And it was shorter, but you need to always be out ahead on web. So.
One of the things we did for web, and actually, I mean, this is my first year advising, and so I didn't really realize it was second semester. It's a good breaking point, but with our online staff, I mean, they really are focused on points. I mean, obviously they wanted to tell great stories, but when it comes down to it, it's points. And so there was like a semester schedule. So it was like every week you had to have 3, 100-word blurbs of some kind of post has to be made. If you were like the photo guy, you had to have at least like 1 photo or something. And then, there was like one 300-word article a week. And
Love
then
it.
There was like a monthly, you had to have like a larger package.
Yep.
Multimedia, so you had to have some kind of interactive element. And so in terms of gradebook, like doing grades was a nightmare. Like it was really
Yeah.
difficult. And our county has all these restrictions, and so it was really difficult. But I mean, everyone would have the same grade categories. I'd have like X flat. It was a big nightmare. But in terms of getting the production, obviously they were always working until deadlines.
Sure.
So by the end of the week, I have to have 3 posts.
Yep.
Sometimes you'd end up with like 3 posts in one day. But it was better than having that.
And the grading thing, if anyone can figure that out, they'll be just the most famous person on earth. How do you grade a publication class? But the other thing is points. I found that when we started our website, I wouldn't give very many points. Well, then they weren't doing the work. And the minute we jacked that up, what do you mean it's 100 points a week? Well, you just have to do these things. You just need to plan ahead. They're not very big. Web things aren't very big. But all of a sudden, it's like if you're selling something online and you put $10 on it, it won't sell. But you put 100 on it, and all of a sudden, people are fighting over it, right? Same thing with points. Isn't it weird? Humans. We're just so weird. Yes.
How big is your magazine, your monthly?
Last year, I really appreciated my editors. Years prior to that, we would be anywhere between 32 pages and 64. Our biggest one, and get this, a month. Our biggest one was 64 pages. We had a whole package in there on music. We highlighted all the bands, local bands, bands in our school, singers, people going into music. And then we actually went down to a radio station and did a compilation CD. And we had each of the bands give us one song. And so each track was a sampling of those bands. And the first track was my editor's letter from the editor that he recorded on the CD. I have kids coming back, alumni, going, I lost my CD, do you have another one? Because I still have some saved up. That was a very expensive 64 pages, and then we got the CD cover stitched into the middle of the paper.
I was going to ask you, in addition to that, how many do you have on the staff, and how many articles then do they write? With 64 pages, they must write a lot.
Well, and what I appreciated about last year is my editor said, you know what, would it be okay if we just did a 40-page paper every month? Boom. I said, thank you. That would be great. This year's editor wants to do the same thing. So we're just 40 pages. Just 40 pages. We're glossy, full color. Cost us $3,000 a month to publish. That's all advertising, so it's expensive. We publish 8 issues a year. We take January off. That's where we really do kind of a second half of the year push for web and social media. And during that month, my J1 class that is just ending first semester, their final project is a special edition. So they put out a 24-page special edition. But I've already sold advertising for it because our contracts include it. So that's good.
Your yearbook with your magazine. I mean, that was sounded like an excellent idea that we were going to do.
Oh, like on the web? No, we need to do that. And I've heard that, and we need to do that. And back to your question, on average, I have anywhere between 20 and 25 staff.
So they write several articles for each?
They do, and some people write, some people don't write. They just write reviews, they take pictures. I have several designers, everyone. That's where grading is a nightmare, yes.
How many copies of your paper do you produce?
1,600. We have about 1,250 students in our school. We print 1,600. We give everyone a paper at no cost. We deliver it during second period to every class. We count them out. We have 3 newsstands. If you want to spend a little money, buy newsstands. I have one outside my class. I have one in the library. I have one outside the school store. So we stock those full, and then we send it out to subscribers, to everyone who advertised. And then our kids sign up. We have on distribution day, they sign up and they have to take a few of our papers to 2 businesses in town. Doctor's offices, that's where you get advertisers. If you're sitting at the dentist and you own a store and you're looking at this high school paper going, really, this is a high school paper? I have a few copies I can show you later, but then they call and go, hey, can I advertise in that? So, yeah, who else? Yes?
How much do y'all charge for advertising for something like that? Like, how do you begin to?
I'll send you our ad brochure and contract if you email me. And, you know, full page on the back cover, we have a local community college that every year buys the back cover full page, full color, and we give them a 20% discount. So for them, it's $6,400 a year, and they gladly pay it. Yeah.
Do y'all get the students to go out and get
Yep.
sponsors?
Yep, and I have a business manager, and I have a little business team, and I have an accountant, and we have QuickBooks and all that. And I'm terrible at math, so that's the nightmare of my thing. So we'll finish editing. I'm going to stick around all day, though, so any of those questions, feel free to keep asking me. Yes?
One last question.
Yes?
When your students write these articles,
Okay.
how tempted are you to rewrite them for them?
Very. I never do a thing, never touch a word, never make a correction, and we'll get to that in my next point. So this one, copy editing for second draft, on Google Docs, they simply, they have to get on everyone's, I think what we do is we pull up a story on every computer, and then they just move chairs, and everyone has to look at everyone else's story and make comments on it. And so that's for second draft, and they have to do high-low. As the advisor, edit last. I know you're going to be tempted to see what they're doing. The best way I can do to stay out of it is not to read it. It's really scary, and we have had some things where I've been very frustrated and very upset during layout because I can't believe they went ahead and did something that they knew was wrong, and so they end up making the decision. I make them say it, but I guess we need to cut this story or whatever. But you have to trust your editors. So as an advisor, I work with my editors, and we'll get into that during the motivation talk this afternoon. I don't really work with the staff at all. I mean, really, I had one of the staffers, he was new to staff last year, come up to me halfway during the year, and he goes, "You've got a great job. Like, you don't do anything." And I said, "Thank you. Yeah, and I get paid well for it, too." And he has no idea, because in his eyes, I don't do anything. I sit at my desk. The editors will come talk to me or whatever, but it's so much behind the scenes. And we'll talk about that later. I invest a lot of time in my editors that the others don't see. And so I'm very hands-off. I let them do it. So, but I do read through everything because I don't want to be in a lawsuit. Yeah. So I do at the very end, during layout. I have to be there till 9:30 at night anyway. The other thing about layout is my first year, they had so much fun with the previous advisor that he would lock them in the school overnight and let them stay all night, and he would go home. Either that or he let them take the desktop computers home. And so I had to break all those bad habits, but we would have layout till 3:30, 4 in the morning. We would do Friday night into Saturday, come back Saturday late afternoon, do it again. Second year I said, okay, now I've sat back and I watched this, and I don't believe we have to do it this way. We now have layout, mandatory layout for everyone, Monday night and Tuesday night from 3:30 till 9:30. Parents provide meals. We call it POPs, Parents of Publication Students. They sign up for the whole year. We get a salad, a main dish, a dessert, and drinks. It's the best meal I eat all month because I really don't cook. And so we have it all set up. It's Monday night, Tuesday night till 9:30. Wednesday is when we upload it to the printer. We're usually done, and that's just my editor and my assistant editor and my design editor. No one else has to come. We make final things, we PDF it, we send it to the printer. We're usually done sometimes by 4 in the afternoon, sometimes 6. If we do end up staying, we'll order a pizza, but you don't have to. Don't make them think you have to stay there all night. Yes?
When you do your layout, do you have the whole staff do it?
Yeah, and that's changed every year. I have a design editor. One time the design editor did everything, and that left me high and dry the next year. I had no designers. So now we have a design editor and designers, and we do additional teaching with them, and then hopefully one of them applies the next year for design editor. But edit last, don't be tempted. And whatever you do, when you do get on, what I do is I have sticky notes, and so I start writing page, whatever, the name, here's what's wrong, page, and then sometimes they come into class, because I go to school early, I get there at like 6, that's when I do all my editing. They'll come in, I'll have this long thing of sticky notes. I'll hand them out. I don't make any changes. Don't do it. Don't be tempted. I have to laugh when I enter competitions. For state, I think it's state does it. I don't know if nationals, but they ask you what percentage of your publication is student written or student edited or whatever. And I'm like, really? There's another answer besides 100%? So I just put 100, 100, 100 because I unlock the door, I let them in, I advise, but I don't touch it. Is it tempting? Oh my gosh, that was the hardest thing for me to do, was to become an advisor. As a teacher, I'm in control. I teach, I hand out the assignments, I grade, but as an advisor, you bite your tongue a lot. And you listen, and you let them fumble along and fail, and you advise them, and that's the best way. So as much as you're tempted, don't do it, would be my advice. Teach editing during Journalism 1. If you do not have a Journalism 1 class, then do teaching. And even if you do, once students join staff, don't give up the teaching. Just have your editors teach. So we'll do like once a week on Tuesdays. We'll do breakfast where they go down and get breakfast, and then they come back, and then we do a 10-minute teaching on something. Style book rules, just reminders, how to write a caption. But that could be your time if you don't have that introductory class, that you could do that. So, yes?
one of the things that I think is really important is to emphasize that you did training in the beginning having to do with legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
I do a week-long training on what is libel and how
Okay.
to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, some advisors would hear your advice and go, oh, okay, I don't have to.
Oh yeah, it's not without training, right?
And it's incredibly important because when it comes down to it, you're the one that's legally responsible for what's being published.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
And I do the libel training with everybody in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I also belong to NEA because they have liability coverage.
Yep.
For many years.
$1 million, I believe. Yeah.
A rider on my house insurance.
Mm-hmm. So do I. Yep. Take note. On your home, is it homeowners insurance? Yeah. As a journalism advisor, you should get that. It's like $6 every 6 months or something. It's very inexpensive. Yeah.
And what is what? It's a rider on your homeowner.
It's liability.
If you contact your homeowner's insurance agent and talk to them about getting professional liability insurance on your homeowners, it's like $15 a year for mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it covers you up to $100,000, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you are sued on the job, they will help cover you.
Absolutely.
I keep an active membership with my NEA,
Mm-hmm.
my state and national organization, because they also have coverage.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that you've got to train the whole staff.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things that I have found over the years is sometimes there will be something libelous in the article that I don't recognize because I don't understand what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
An editor or someone comes to me and say, we can't publish this because this is actually what's being said.
Right. Right.
So.
Yep, and that's where if you have a Journalism 1 class, you can do all that teaching. You have to teach. With every right comes a responsibility. If you don't have a Journalism 1 class, you do have to teach. You can't just let them run amok. You still can keep your hands off, but you have to teach. They have to have an understanding of the importance of it. So, yes, sir.
In your design of the paper, are
yes.
kids using InDesign?
Yes.
And who teaches them InDesign?
I try to. I'll get my design editor will do some teaching. We have a local college where the design instructor is from England. He has a wonderful British accent, and he worked on the Harry Potter movie and on Batman, and they love him, and he loves coming into the school. So just see who's in your community. I teach them how to make a text box, how to import the text, and then Tim Harrower's book, Design Handbook, is phenomenal. If you don't have that, get one. If you can get a classroom set, it talks about infographics, it talks about modular design. I use that. I have a daughter studying graphic design in college right now, and she was my design editor. That's where she caught the passion. When she's home, I have her come in and teach, but get some other people to come in, but Tim Harrower's book, what's it called? The Newspaper Designer's Handbook or whatever. It's great. You'd be amazed who's in your community. Yeah. Yeah. You know, if you ever speak, I always look at these people more than I look at these people. Sorry. Anyway, yes. Harrower. It's Harrower. Tim Harrower. I have an old edition. He has a newer one out. Phenomenal. We're going to kind of breeze through this. I have till 10:45, correct? Show, don't tell. My kids in my Journalism 1 class get really frustrated with me in the very beginning because from day one I say, don't tell me what happened, show me what happened. I don't get it, I don't get it. Basically, they want to give you a subjective opinion. Junior Jenny Lund loves spending time with her family. Well, that's your opinion. Well, no, it's not. She told me. Okay, well, show me that she loves spending time with her family because the objective fact is Junior Jenny Lund spent last weekend with her family. Okay, that's fact. Show me what that was like. Junior Jenny Lund watched Mean Girls with her 9-year-old sister Friday night and played cards with her parents and grandmother. Okay, show me, don't tell me. And you really got to work through that. I was going to have you go through these, but Junior Alex Gonzalez is the most reliable student council officer. That's subjective. How would you make that an objective sentence? You have to show that he's responsible, right? But that's tough. But I would really spend some time working with your kids to show, not tell. So we'll skip past these examples. I was going to have you work really hard. Editing, you have to have an AP style book. On your flash drive, online, I have a style book that I created, what I believe are the top 25 style book rules that I want my kids to know: the name rule, the school rule, the teacher administrator rule, the date rule, the number rule, the money rule, all that kind of stuff. I have an example, and then I have a space that is their example. We go through one style book or rule or a couple of them a day. Every week or so, we'll do a quiz, style book quiz. When we're done with all the style book rules, they have to have that filled in, all their examples. They turn it in. I give them more points. Yes? Yes. Yep, there's a style book on there. But you have to, you're getting one of these in your box if you haven't already. You will get an AP style book. At least have one in your newsroom, if not more. They come out with a new one every year, but maybe get a new one every couple of years. Yes. So, yes, they do, and you can find it online. Yep, definitely. Okay, writing tips to encourage your kids: make every word count. If anyone else can say it, it's not a good quote. That's a good way to encourage them to get reaction quotes. Write short. We talked about the pointer eye tracking study. People will read a 300-word story before they'll read a 1,000-word story. Write immediately following an interview. Try and get them in the habit of doing that. And don't write alone. And what I mean by that is share your writing from day one. I said to my journalism class, okay, first thing I want you to do is work on your 3-paragraph lead, but first share a blank document with me. Because in Google Docs, you have to create a document, you rename it, and then you hit the share button. They have to enter my email address. That opens the window for me, so now I can see. Well, this one student, I kept grading their drafts and everything. When I did look at their drafts to edit them, his wasn't there. It was blank. And so I gave him a 0 in the grade book, and he goes, "How come I got a 0? And I said, well, you had nothing written. Yeah, I did. And so he showed me, and I said, that's weird, because when I look at it and I showed him, there's nothing there. And he goes, oh, you must have the blank document. What? Well, you told us to share a blank document with you. Oh, okay. No, I want you to share a blank document because I want to be a part of the writing process from the very minute you begin writing. Oh, and the light bulb went on for both of us. So don't write alone. And that's why they need their peers editing and you editing. 3-paragraph lead competition. We won't have time for this. I was going to have you do it. It is in your resources. It's on your flash drive. This I do in one class period. I have them get in groups of 3. As soon as they come in, I go, hurry, quick, we need to take attendance. You're going to get in groups of 3. I want you to go out. Go anywhere around school. There's a coffee shop across the street, which I let them go to. I said, just go. Go in the parking lot. Go wherever you need to go. I want you to find a person, and I want you to find a story and an angle that you're going to write about. You have to ask that person 5 questions. I need those questions written down. I need their answers written down. And then I need you to ask them about 4 other people that you can interview about this story, get their names and numbers, and then I want you to come back, hop on a computer, hop on a Google document, share it with me, and I want you to write a 3-paragraph lead. So make sure you get an anecdote. You got to ask those questions, get an anecdote. So they had to write the anecdote, the news paragraph, and 1 quote. And actually, you can write a 3-paragraph lead that's 3 sentences. I've read some phenomenal ones there, 3 sentences. In journalism, a paragraph can be 1 sentence. And so, and then I have a grading sheet, and this, you have this. First team finish gets bonus 2 points, and by finished, they have 1 worksheet to work off of. They come back, say there's 3 on a team, they all have to write their own 3-paragraph lead. So 2 of them may be finished, and the 3rd one's still writing. They're like, come on, hurry, 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 because I have to have 3-paragraph leads, I have to have their worksheet, and then boom, you win. You all get 2 bonus points. Grading, interview notes, 15 points. 3-paragraph lead, they get 5 points for each. They get -1 point for every style book error. So I said the name better be spelled correctly, your tag rule, the name rule, all that kind of stuff. So suggestions, edit each other's work, get an anecdote. 50 minutes, it's phenomenal. Then I have them report out, and they do it. They do all this, they write it, they read them to me, or they tell what the story is, all in a 50-minute class period. And one day, it's amazing what they find. This one team went to a girl in the lunchroom and they're like, okay, what's something that's happened in your life, like something big, like whatever? And she goes, well, my brother, who at the time was 18 years old, on September 11th was in one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center. You're kidding. What do you remember about that time? Well, I was kind of little, you know, and he flew out to Boston to go visit a college, and in our school in Bismarck, North Dakota, we had no idea. And that's where the kids, they always have these phenomenal stories. And I said, see, everyone has a story to tell, okay? And then share, hey, I made it. Ta-da! Yay!